So I'm going to do a quick little survey of the audience just to find out how truly entrepreneurial the Toronto EO chapter is. I'm not sure if you're aware, but I was an EO member back from 1995 to 2000. Had 2 EO qualifying companies prior to joining 1-800-GOT-JUNK as the, whoa, sorry, I'm getting this weird. Prior to joining 1-800-GOT-JUNK as the chief operating officer. So I've kind of been in your shoes. I've been to lots of the events, international universities, board stuff, GLCs. So really, really love the organization because I've been around it now for almost 19 years. But I just want to get a pulse as to how entrepreneurial this chapter is. So I'm going to read to you a list of traits that describe entrepreneurs. There's 11 traits, but as soon as you hear 5 traits that describe you, then I'd like you to stand up. So are you often filled with energy? Are you often flooded with ideas? Are you driven? Are you restless? Are you unable to keep still? That's 5. Are you often working on little sleep? Do you get euphoric? Do you burn out periodically? Do you act out sexually, which is like flirting? And the last is, do you feel persecuted by those who do not accept your vision? So take a look around the room. Don't sit down yet. I think actually is everyone standing? No. Who's not standing? I got one over there. One, maybe one not. Just embarrassed. By the way, those are actually not traits of entrepreneurs per se. Those are the clinical diagnosed traits for bipolar disorder. So you can all sit now. If you actually went to a doctor and were diagnosed for bipolar disorder, if you said yes to 5, you'd be clinically diagnosed as bipolar. If you said yes upwards towards the 11, it depends on how far out on the spectrum you now are. But bipolar disorder is nicknamed by the medical community as the CEO disease. Most other people don't have those traits. I actually, for fun one day, did that exact same list to the Canadian Association of Actuaries. There were 300 people in the audience, and about 7 people out of 300 stood up by the time we got to 11. Literally no one identifies with it. You do it to a group of teachers, they don't identify with it. So the reason I bring this up is my TED Talk, the talk that I'm one of only 10 Canadians that has a talk on TED.com. My talk about raising kids to be entrepreneurs instead of lawyers talks about the fact that when we were young and in the school system, we were discriminated against. We were told to sit still and pay attention and be like everybody else and stop looking for shortcuts, and the right answer was in the back of the textbook. We were taught to memorize everything. We were told to stop selling stuff to all the other kids, and why couldn't we just fit in? Well, entrepreneurs don't fit in. We're not supposed to fit in, and we're not supposed to be like teachers and doctors and lawyers. So I'd like you to take a look at my TED Talk. If you give me your business card and put TED on it, I'll actually send you the link to it. But I'm on a bit of a mission to change the world on this. I don't want to keep medicating these diseases out of children. The reality is that Ted Turner, Bill Gross, Steve Jobs, 2 of the 3 founders of Netscape, Richard Branson, Henry Ford were all clinically diagnosed with the traits of bipolar disorder. Now, if they'd been medicated, we probably wouldn't have what we have today. See, we're not the disease. Redheads are probably more of a disease, right? I'm kidding. Like, there's just so much fewer redheads. This might be the problem. No, I'm just, like, why? The only reason we're the problem is because we're not like the rest of the society, but we're not supposed to be. So anyway, that's not what I'm going to talk about today. But I am going to cover some of the bipolar traits of entrepreneurs and talk to you about how to actually leverage those. Because the reality is we've got them, and we're not going to take the medication unless we're way out on the spectrum. Before I dive in, I want to give you a bit of a background so you know who I am. I had the name Cameron a long time before she did. I'm married, and we've got 4 kids, 2 girls and 2 boys. We live in Phoenix. We also have a place in Vancouver. Got big hobbies with golf and tennis. Love to ski, love cooking, really like red wine. And I like hanging out with my friends, most of whom are entrepreneurs. I'm a bit of a serial entrepreneur. I've started a number of different businesses or been involved in a lot of entrepreneurial companies. My first business that I got involved in was called College Pro Painters. I think most people here would know of College Pro. But if you're in the US, you don't really know of it other than the fact that it's the largest house painting company in the world. It was started in Thunder Bay, Ontario. And every year it goes from 60 people at the head office to 800 franchisees who had 8,000 painters. And then they produced $60 million in revenue between May 1st and August 31st. So $60 million in revenue in 4 months. And then September 1st, 8,800 people leave and go back to school. And they start again. So every year, this team of 60 people builds a 9,000 person company from scratch. That's where I learned how to build businesses. At 21 years old, I had 12 employees on my payroll. But for me, the number 21 looks like the number 12. I kind of freak out when I see numbers, and I flip a lot of them. It was frustrating in university. Anytime a girl ever gave me her phone number, it was always wrong. And I just didn't know if she liked me or didn't like me, or if I wrote it down wrong. I also have 17 of the 18 signs of attention deficit disorder. My wife said if I was paying attention to the test, I probably would have said yes to the 18th question as well. I co-founded the franchising group for Boyd Auto Body and Glass. Boyd's now the largest collision repair chain in the world. It's about a $600 million publicly traded TSE-listed company. I built another company that we sold for 64 million Canadian, but unfortunately, I ended up with what you see on the bottom right-hand corner. The $64 million transaction, by the time we closed, was worth $3.2 million, because we sold the company at January of 2000, and by the time the transaction closed, the market had collapsed, so we effectively didn't walk away with anything. So I became a garbage man. I was actually in an EO group in a forum with Brian Scudamore, who was the founder of a company called the Rubbish Boys. And in forum for 5 years, he watched me growing these companies, and he asked me if I would coach him on growing his business. Eventually, he actually asked me if I would become an employee and work for him after a couple months. And I said, no, that would be like kissing my sister. Anyway, I joined as his 14th employee, and 6.5 years later, we had 3,100 employees system-wide. So 1-800-GOT-JUNK became the largest junk removal company on the planet. We were operating in 43 states, 4 countries, 330 cities. We had 3,000 employees, about 1,200 trucks. Went from 2 million to 126 million in that 6-year period, and we had no debt, no outside shareholders. So we actually learned again how to grow businesses. So now what I do is I work behind the scenes and coaching CEOs on growing high growth companies. I've worked behind the scenes with all the CEOs of these companies, helping a number of them exit, helping a number of them build best companies to work for. My largest client currently does 700 million in revenue, and the one that I've helped grow the most is MCI Global, an EOer from Geneva. I've coached him to go from 100 million to 600 million, and from 100 million in revenue to 120 million in profit in 6 years. So that's kind of the stuff that I do now. In this presentation, there's not a lot of bullet points. It's actually been proven that you can't listen and read at the same time, so there's not going to be a lot of text up on the screens. What I'm going to try to do is burn the images into your mind today. I'm going to try to get you to kind of visualize and to listen so that you learn a lot of this content. It's also going to feel like you're drinking from a fire hose today. The information is going to be coming at you. Whose phone was that? That's a $20 fine in EO?
Yeah, that's a tablet. I don't know why.
I'll take the 20 later. Is she? Nice. So you're going to be drinking from a bit of a fire hose today. If you think I'm going a little bit too quickly, just put your hand up. I'm not going to slow down, but at least we'll know who's the dumb one in the group. I've given all of you a copy of Double Double. I don't want you to read it. I think it's actually insane that you're told to read a book every month or a book a week. I think it's insane that you take a book and read the whole book. It's pointless, because a lot of the stuff that we're reading in these books causes stress for us. It adds a whole bunch of more tasks to our to-do list, and it's random learning that's not necessarily tied to what we're working on right now, so it's a complete and utterly waste of time. What I'd like you to do, if you open up to the table of contents, I'm going to tell you 5 key chapters that I'd like you to read. So I want you to read the chapter 1, chapter 2, 3, 4, and 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6. All of your employees should be reading chapter 6 for sure. I talk about that in another presentation, but it's pretty incredible where we all think meetings suck. The reality is meetings don't suck. We just suck at running meetings because we never had any training on it. Okay, so that's it with the book. In the handouts that you've got, pull this sheet aside. This page is not for your notes. You'll need it later. You don't want to take notes on this one. Keep your mind open today that maybe I'm right. Maybe this content will help you. Maybe these ideas will help you grow your business. Maybe it will help you. I had a CEO that saw the first half of this presentation at the EMP event about 6 years ago, the first time I ever did it for EO. And he came up to me afterwards, big guy, 6'4", 220, 230, $50 million business, $5 million EBITDA, healthy, happy marriage, great kids. And he came up to me afterwards and gave me a hug and started sobbing on my shoulder, shaking uncontrollably. And when he finally released after about a minute of crying, I said, "What's wrong?" And he said, "For the last 6 months, I've been suicidal. And I think you just saved me because now I realize I'm not crazy. I'm just an entrepreneur." This content that I'm going to cover today isn't necessarily the core on how to grow a company, but I guarantee you it will change your business, your relationships, and probably your life. This is the growth stuff behind 1-800-GOT-JUNK, just so you can see the perspective. What we're going to cover, though, in this first section is the roller coasters of CEOs, the roller coaster ride that we go through. I talked a little bit about Steve Jobs being hypomanic. There's all kinds of entrepreneurs that are diagnosed with this. 2 of the 3 founders of Netscape were bipolar as well. What's this look like? What's this look like to you? Your day? What does it look like? A sine wave? What's that? Cash flow. How about a roller coaster, right? The life of an entrepreneur is a roller coaster ride. So I'm going to walk you through how to actually understand the roller coaster ride that you're on. There's a stage where you get to hear on a physical roller coaster. What are you feeling at this stage of a physical roller coaster? What's rushing through your feelings? Anticipation, fear, excitement, energy, right? You're not really sure what's coming yet, but you're kind of into it, right? You can feel that rush of energy through you. It's called uninformed optimism. That uninformed optimism is you're so excited, but you're not really sure what you're excited about. Your emotions are racing. You got a perpetual smile on your face. You don't need any coffee to get started in the morning. You got all kinds of energy. Energy is just flowing throughout you. You're passionate, completely excited about whatever it is you're working on in the business, and everything seems like crazy fun. When you look around you at kind of the situations in business, even stuff that should be dangerous, you actually kind of look at it and go, this is awesome. Like entrepreneurs would see this and go, shit, I can sell tickets. When you're at uninformed optimism, you're pretty sure you're going to take over the world. Right? Like the best idea, the $1 billion, this is what I'm going to go for. That's uninformed optimism. But then something clicks. Something changes. You kind of go over top of the curve a little bit, and you hit this stage called informed pessimism. Well, when you're here on a physical roller coaster, what are you feeling? Scared. What's the first phrase that comes to mind on the physical roller coaster? Oh shit. I've done this presentation in about 20 countries now around the world, and in every country, no matter what the language, what they say is, oh shit. That's informed pessimism. It's like, oh, I didn't know this was coming. Shit. This is harder. Right? This is a little more scary than I thought it was going to be. This is a little tougher than I thought it was going to be. Maybe I won't quite knock the cover off the ball. Maybe the billion was misspelled. It might only be a million. Something has actually changed. You kind of think that maybe you just don't have enough time in the day anymore. Maybe it's just a little more stressful. Why the hell is everybody so happy? Right? Have you ever had that kind of feeling? Like you walk through your office, like, what the fuck are you all smiling for? That's because you're at informed pessimism. You start worrying about things, kind of rolling them through your head a lot. You might even find yourself with a few tears coming to your eyes every once in a while for no real explanation. It's because you're at this informed pessimism stage. And you may also think that, geez, maybe I've made a mistake. Coffee is absolutely necessary where you're in informed pessimism because you need something other than that normal raw energy that's inside you to keep you going. And at this informed pessimism stage, you're going to continue to go down the roller coaster. It's just natural, and you start sliding toward this stage of crisis of meaning. Now, when you're on a physical roller coaster and you're at that kind of very bottom, just before you hit the bottom, what are you feeling at that point? What are you feeling? Gravity. You're in absolute fear at this point. You're not thinking at all. You're probably screaming. You're pretty close to kind of crapping yourself, right? Like, oh my God, like you're screaming. You're pretty sure that for the first time, your roller coaster is going to go right through the bottom of the tracks and you're going to die, right? It can't get any worse than this because that crisis of meaning stage. Screaming at staff for no real reason whatsoever is when you're at crisis of meaning. When you're pointing fingers at each other and you're starting to blame. I had a client that I was coaching in Vancouver who was clearly at crisis of meaning, didn't know that he was, and he was complaining about the global financial crisis and how it was hurting his restaurant, right? I'm like, wait a second. You have a 100-seat restaurant in a very busy area, and you're saying it's the global financial crisis? I kind of think you got to get out of the freaking office and go tell some people that you exist around your neighborhood, but you can't sit there reading the newspaper all day being paralyzed. But because he is paralyzed, you can't do anything. At crisis of meaning, you're unable to think, you're unable to move, you're completely and absolutely frozen. And you're pretty sure that when you look around you that no one's ever had it as bad as you've got it right now. Crisis of meaning is absolutely paralyzing to you. You might even think about selling the business, not because you want to, but because you see no other way out other than to sell. See, the reality is when you're at crisis of meaning, you're actually completely frozen. And when you're at this completely frozen stage, you're not thinking clearly. I'm going to show you a little video clip of a guy who's on a roller coaster ride. And I want you to tell me whether or not you think he's thinking clearly at the end.
Yeah.
Okay. Are we done yet? See, the reality is when you're at crisis of meaning, you're not thinking clearly. And entrepreneurs are so damn stubborn and narcissistic that at times we refuse to actually listen even to our own emotions that are telling us that we need help, or we need to pause, or we need to take reflection, or we need to just slow it down. Right? We actually are not thinking clearly an awful lot of the times when we think we are, and we can be making very dangerous decisions. If you don't get through this crisis of meaning stage and go around the bottom, you will crash and burn. You will fall off the bottom of the curve. So the key is, how do you get through that? How do you get support? Support to get through that bottom so you get over to that last stage of informed optimism. Sometimes you just need someone to listen, like your forum, right? Like a minister or a coach or a therapist. Sometimes you need new ideas because you don't necessarily see the right ones. Coaching, mentoring can often help because people can see the forest for the trees. You may need a kick in the ass, somebody to just kind of get you going again. Maybe you need someone to hold up a mirror to make you look into it so that you can see that at times you're actually causing some of the problems yourself as well. But you do need to get through the bottom of this phase to get over to this stage called informed optimism. Now, if you look at the first stage, this uninformed optimism, when you're at this uninformed optimism stage, do you think it's a good stage to be at or a bad stage to be at? Put your hand up if you think it's a good stage. Put your hand up if you think it's a bad stage. Put your hand up if you're not thinking. See, the reality is it's just a stage. When you're at uninformed optimism, it's a stage. You're going to be at this stage. The key is, how do we get through the roller coaster? So I actually learned this at Disney World. I hate roller coasters. I was at Disney World a couple years ago with all the kids, and they wanted to go on Space Mountain, and I really didn't want to go on Space Mountain at all. It was on my never to do again bucket list. But you can't tell your kids that I'm not going, go by yourself, so you go. And I realized that after the first time, it really wasn't as horrifying. I mean, it was pretty bad, but I decided the second time we were going to go on, I was going to pretend I was having fun. I was actually going to pretend that I was one of those guys who would put their arms up in the air and shake their arms and wave and smile the whole ride. So I did. I faked it. The whole time I put a fake smile on. I was like, woo! And meantime I'm going, fucking hell! But I didn't say anything except, woo! And when I finished the roller coaster, I was like, all right, I did it. It wasn't that bad. I didn't die. I kind of had a little bit of fun. By the end of 2.5, 3 days at Disney World and doing all the roller coasters multiple times, I was kind of enjoying them. Because I had to decide that at each stage, I was going to go through the stage. The key was to control my emotions a little bit through the stage. So when you're at uninformed optimism, It's a good and a bad stage, depending on what you're doing at the time. So knowing that you're at this energy stage, right, with all this full energy and excitement and passion, what are a couple of things in your business day to day that you could be doing, could be working on? What kind of tasks, what kind of things could you do? Yeah. Planning? Maybe, but you're so excited with planning, your plans might be a little bit grandiose.
Something highly creative.
Highly creative, sure. Lots of energy, throwing stuff against the wall, right? Yeah? Researching? Maybe not. You're so much flipping energy. You can't sit still long enough for that. Promotion. Yeah, promotion. John, filled with energy. What do you do?
Take care of yourself.
Take care of yourself? No? Yeah? Networking. Sales. Marketing. Calling the media. Standing on stage. Having a team, a pep rally. Do you know what I did 1 hour before I went on stage? Or floor? I drank a 5-hour energy. Every speaking event, 1 hour before I go on, I drink a 5-hour energy just to get my energy up to that uninformed optimism manic stage a little bit so that my energy is a little bit faster than normal. Right? Now, you'll see me in the afternoon. My energy, I won't want to talk to you. By 3 in the afternoon, I'll kind of be one of the grumpy people in the room. No energy left because I'm starting to crash. Okay? But when I'm at uninformed optimism, or if I can get myself there, anything outward facing. Now, because I've got this uninformed optimism, what don't I want to do? What are a couple things you do not want to do when you have that much energy and enthusiasm and excitement? What about financials? Make projections. Yeah? Yeah, you don't want to slow down and think because you want to leverage the energy you're at. Do you ever notice the day you open your business, who starts trying to sell things to you? Every promo company in the world, right? Here's pens with your, and you're like, oh, I'll buy some of those too. Right? You don't want to make any buying decisions or hiring decisions or big purchase, build buildings, sign leases. No big decisions with financial commitments when you're at uninformed optimism because you're going to wake up the next day and go, oh shit, I hired 4 people? What was I thinking? I had a guy one time call me up, day 1 of running his business, and he was super excited. Guy's named Mark Rubin, EO member now in DC. He's like, Cammy, I'm super excited. I just hired 3 guys. I'm like, whoa, you're ahead of curve. You were only supposed to have 1. He's like, oh shit, you're right. He called me the next day. He goes, I got good news and bad news. He goes, bad news is 2 guys quit. Good news is I'm back on budget. So remember that when you're at this uninformed optimism stage, you have to be really careful not to actually make any hiring or purchase decisions. No buying, no budgeting, no hiring, no planning, no accounting, no major decisions, because you're going to have to live with those decisions the next way, and that uninformed optimism can catch up with you. But yes, you want to be selling to new clients and investors, marketing, networking, talking to the media, and recruiting new employees. By the way, if you're talking to the media or doing interviews when you're that manic, you've got to remember that you're talking to a journalist who's much quieter and analytical or amiable, and you want to slow down your tone and your pace a little bit till you get them excited and then raise them up a little bit. But if you come at them at 100 miles an hour, you will scare the hell out of them and they will not cover you. Okay? You got to slow it down and try to match them and then bring them up with you. So what about informed pessimism? Again, good stage or bad stage, it's simply both. What activities do you not want to do when you're at informed pessimism? What don't you want to do?
Performance reviews.
Yeah, don't want to do performance reviews? Because you're going to start telling people how bad they really are when you didn't really mean it as bad? You don't want to talk to the press when you're in informed optimism or informed pessimism? How's it going? Well, it's not really that good and I'm kind of worried about some stuff. Right? You don't want to have a pep rally because you'll end up being a little bit more negative with the team than you intended to be. But at this stage, this is exactly when you want to do your strategic thinking, your budgeting, your planning, because your projections will be a little bit more conservative, a little bit more thought through. You'll what-if stuff a little bit more. You'll often find that chief operating officers or second-in-commands live in this zone of informed pessimism. We have to, because we have to be able to reel back that optimism and energy of the entrepreneur. See, again, if entrepreneurs are manic depressive, their mania allows them to start a whole bunch of things, and then we're high in ADD, which causes the boredom, and we get kind of bored of all these things we've just started, so we start delegating everything. The COO's job is to pull all that back in together into a plan and to start building it in some logical fashion. Kind of a little bit of cleanup along the way. Well, when you get down to crisis of meaning, when you're literally frozen, What do you want to be working on in your business at that point? Completely frozen. What are you going to be doing? Energy builders, yeah, working on yourself. There's not a whole lot you can do at crisis of meaning. I had a franchisee years ago who called me up, and he was completely panic-stricken, totally terrified, worried he was going bankrupt. And I said, here's what I want you to do. Do you have a park nearby? He said, yeah. I said, I want you to go to the park, take your shoes off, take your socks off, roll your pants up, just walk around in the park for a half hour. At the end of the half hour, I want you to come back to me or on the phone, and we'll start talking through it. He goes, what am I supposed to do in the park? I said, don't worry about it, you'll know. So he went to the park, half hour, walked around with his socks off, shoes off, pants rolled up, came back after a half hour. He goes, I didn't really come up with anything. I said, I know, but it felt good to relax, didn't it? He goes, yeah, it really did. That's kind of one of the things you need to be doing when you're at crisis of meaning. You need to take some time. There was a point in 1-800-GOT-JUNK's history where we were on the edge of bankruptcy. Our chief financial officer came up to me and said, I'm worried we're going bankrupt. And I was like, no, everything's fine, everything's good, we're on track, we're on plan. I pulled Brian aside. We had this little meeting room, a secret meeting room in the office that no one knew about. And we literally duck into this little tiny room. And I pulled him aside and I'm like, we have to fake this thing. We have to get through this. Our CFO knows that there's problems. We got to get through it. We got through it. But he and I were so stressed that week, we actually went to the storage cabinet, this huge storage closet. And in the middle of a normal day Tuesday, we put some music on and the CEO and COO cleaned the storage area for about 4 hours. It was the only thing we could do. We were so frozen that we were incapable of doing anything else. Sometimes just cleaning your filing cabinet is a way to move forward if you can't get out of the office. What I recommend, though, is that you get out of the office. Now, when you go through this crisis of meaning and you got to come out the other side, be careful that you don't celebrate too early. When you're on a physical roller coaster and you're kind of going around the other side, you feel the chain kick in, then you know you're okay. You need to know you're okay, not think you're okay. It's not about I think I can, it's about I know I can on that other side. And then remember that when you're on this big macro curve, this transition curve, that there's going to be some small little micro curves as well. Something great's happening, but something small could knock you back down. The other thing about this roller coaster ride that we're on is that it doesn't end. See, a normal physical roller coaster ride, it ends. Well, this is one that you don't get off. It keeps going. So we want to learn to be able to temper our curves a little bit, and we want to be able to understand that we're on the curves and it's okay, and then do what we're supposed to do with them. So if you're at this crisis of meaning stage, at this very bottom, right here, there's some feelings that you're going to be having. Has anybody ever had a kind of a metallic taste at the back of your neck? It almost feels like you might be chewing on tinfoil. Put your hand up high if you've had a metallic taste at the back of your neck. So about half of you. So that metallic taste at the back of your neck, okay? September of 2000, I've got this metallic taste at the back of my neck for about 2 years now. And I go into a doctor for just before the doctor, I'm in an elevator in Seattle at their office. We had 900 employees. We'd been laying off about 150 a month because of the crash. And our valuation had gone from 64 million to 3.2 million. And, but everything was good, right? Like we were just still cranking. And one of the VPs tapped me on the shoulder and he's like, are you okay? And I turned around to say yes, and I collapsed on the floor of the elevator and started to cry. Like I literally collapsed and started to cry. And that was it. Like that night we were all out for dinner. Everything was good again, right? We're going to take over the world. We'll turn the business around. About 2 weeks later, I went to the doctor for a routine physical. And the doctor said, what's going on? I'm like, not much. I said, everything's pretty good, just normal physical. I said, I've got this weird metallic taste at the back of my neck, but everything's really good. And he goes, what do you mean that metallic taste? I said, well, it just kind of tastes like I'm chewing on tinfoil, aluminum foil. I don't know what it is. He goes, well, what's going on? I go, not much. Our company's collapsed. And I got married in July. And my wife conceived 3 weeks later. My mom has terminal cancer. I quit my job recently, so that's kind of cool. And I'm moving from Seattle up to Vancouver, and that's neat. We just bought a house, and that's kind of cool because we've never had a house before, so we're our first mortgage. My wife quit her job now too because she knows that she's going to be raising the kids, so we got that going, and that's kind of cool. And my weight's up. I'm like 221 pounds. I'm 185 right now, but everything's pretty good. And he goes, I just want to give you a little test. So he hands me this test on stress. And if you get 90 points, you have a 50% chance of a heart attack. If you get 150 points, you get a 90% chance of a heart attack. It's a test out of 500. I had 430 points out of 500 happening simultaneously. I had 9 of the 10 most stressful life events happening simultaneously. I thought I was scoring well, right? Like A, right? It's probably the only A I ever got, right, was on this test. I was clinically redlining. The chemical secretion caused by stress that makes you taste the metallic taste at your back of your neck is a physical chemical reaction that your body is releasing to tell you to slow the fuck down. So if you have that now or have had that before, you can't push yourself through that. You need to slow it down. I was clinically redlining. That October, I was written up in the Wall Street Journal as one of 4 supernovas whose careers had gone up very, very fast and flamed out with stress. I was written up 3 years after that in the Globe and Mail as someone who was able to turn that completely back around and actually start to figure it all out again. When you're at crisis of meaning, you can't push through it. You need to actually take some time. So I just want to ask some questions. If you've been at crisis of meaning yourself, which almost all of us as an entrepreneur would have, tell me a couple things that you've done to get through it. What have you done to get through it? To get through that very bottom.
I don't think I've been there.
You don't think you've been there yet?
Exercise.
Exercise, good. Exercise.
Volunteer dog walk at the mountain.
Volunteer dog walk, that's cool.
Coaches.
Coaching. Oh, working with a coach.
Working.
Yeah.
Yeah, talk to people.
Talk to people.
Sit in the park and meditate.
Sit in a park and meditate.
Just cycling.
Cycling, great.
Classical music.
Classical music.
Go for a hike.
Go for a hike.
Hockey.
Hockey.
Use my coach, use my friends.
Use your coach and friends.
I meditate.
Meditate.
I reflect on all the things that have worked that brought me to where I am now. So sort of a backward.
Great. Reflecting, yeah.
Activity sports.
Activity, sports. Exercise.
Hide.
Hide under your pillow, right? By the way, put your hand up if on any random day of the week at some point you went home, crawled into bed, put the pillow over your head, called the office and said, I'm off at a meeting or with the lawyers. Put your hand up if you've done that. Look around. Almost all of us at some point have called in sick when we knew we weren't sick. We just didn't want to fucking deal with it anymore. It's normal because we're under a huge amount of stress. Okay? By the way, having a drink to get through it or smoking something to get through it, like, okay, but not 12, right? It's also not okay to obsess about cycling or obsess about meditation or obsess about parks or obsess about sex. Like, you can't obsess about something to get through a problem because you're creating a problem with another problem. My recommendation is to get through the bottom, you've got to counter it with a lot of different activities, right? 1 cigarette, 1 walk, one meditation, 1 coach. Lots of things will get you through the bottom, not one thing a whole bunch of times. So try to remember that a little bit as well. So that's the emotional roller coaster of entrepreneurs. I want you to remember that you're going to be riding the roller coaster. The key is to know the stage that you're at, remember what it's feeling like, and then try to work on the activities that are most tied to the feeling that you're at. Make sense? So I'm going to switch gears a little bit. When I left 1-800-GOT-JUNK, May of 2007, I literally just said, I don't want to do anything for a few months. I turned off my email. I put an auto reply down that I wasn't talking to anyone. I wasn't going on any business lunches. I wasn't entertaining any business ideas for 3 months. I was going to go in from kind of middle of May until September 1st to do nothing other than just reconnect, have fun, do whatever. I decided to write every day for 15 minutes. Just grab a journal and just wrote. I made lists of everything I'd done, made lists of everything I was good at, made lists of everything I was bad at, lists of everything I loved, everything I hated. I did a lifeline of my life. I did a lifeline of my business life. I made a list of every single business area and every project I'd ever led under every single business area over 20 years in business. I made a list of all the lessons that I'd learned, the leadership lessons I learned. I got as introspective as I could, 15 minutes a day, until there was almost nothing left to write down in this book. And then at the end, I ended up with about 67 lessons of things that I really learned, like I really, really learned. But these were lessons that I really wish I'd known when I was 16 or 20 when I was starting in business, instead of learning when I was 41, 7 years ago. Now, we all know that we're never going to listen to our parents, right? Maybe we start to as we get older, but what if we could listen to ourselves? What if we could actually go into the future and get a bunch of lessons and bring them back to today so we could learn? That's what this session is about. I'm going to give you some of the lessons that I learned over the 20-odd years of running companies. The first one is about balance. Balance is a bit of a lie. I don't believe that I can have balance at all times. What I believe, though, from experience now, is that I can obsess about a couple of things pretty damn well for a few months, and then get bored of a couple of those and switch off and obsess about a couple more. So I balance kind of in obsessions. What I mean is I might balance hard for 3 months on family and friends, and then for the next 3 months I might balance a little bit more on complete business and learning. I might lose track of the family for a little bit, or I might go for family and fitness. So right now what I realize is every spring and every fall for me, I'm really, really busy. I have 7 speaking events in 9 days right now. Okay? But I also know that by the time I get to the middle of May, well, I have 27 speaking events right now before the end of June. But by the time I get to the end of June, I have 0 booked for July and August and the first part of September. So I'm literally going to be taking 8, 9 weeks off again. So I learned to actually balance in stages and not beat myself up about the fact that I'm balanced all the time. We can't be balanced all the time. At least I can't be. So what I've learned is not beat myself up about it, but balance in fits and spurts. Right? Make hay while the sun shines, and then make friends when the sun's not shining, kind of thing. I learned that I had to remain interested to remain interesting. I had an employee come up to me one time and she said, "You know what, Cameron? You're boring." She said, "All you ever talk about is 1-800-GOT-JUNK." Because we hate it. We're sick of it. I was actually sick of it. But I had nothing else left. I'd given up everything. I'd given up friends and family and hobbies and passions and vulnerabilities and security and just being curious about people. I'd given up everything for the sake of this business. The reality was no one cares. See, I don't care what any of you do for work. Even my sister. I don't care about the business. And I know you actually don't really care about what I do. Ben, I don't care about your company. You don't care about what I do. But I actually care about you. I'd actually like to know you. You got this cool stuff going on as a person. But remaining interesting in hobbies and passions actually really starts to release everything else and de-stress you, and it actually makes you a better person. It makes you like yourself more. I had to learn to look in the mirror and like who I saw in the mirror. I had to learn not to bring problems home. I used to show up at the house, and my ex-wife would say that she felt like she got leftovers because I was always exhausted and I was always carrying all the problems of the day. So what I learned how to do was to put the problems in a box. I literally, in my mind, saw myself taking all the problems that I was still worried about, putting them in a box, putting the box on a shelf, closing the door to my office and driving home and leaving the problems in the box. I would try to use this visual cue to just leave them behind me every day. Because the reality is I can't solve them at home, and I'm going to destroy other things around me if I'm constantly carrying the weight of the world around. So by learning how to leave those things behind me was huge. I learned that nights are to recharge. You know, when you go home at the end of the day and you plug this in, do you ever feel guilty about plugging this in? No. Why do we feel so darn guilty as entrepreneurs about just slowing down? Why do we need to work every night? What are you trying to do? You're never going to get it all done. See, as soon as you get the list that you have done, you're going to set more goals with more lists, and you're going to be working on that stuff. So you will never get it all done. You'll never catch up. It's kind of like trying to, you ever look out and you see the horizon and you're driving a car? Do you ever get to it? How come? It keeps moving. So the lie that you're telling yourself of, I'll just work tonight, it's a lie. And I had to learn to release that and learn that when I go home at 6 o'clock now, it's done, it's off. I haven't worked at home now for years at night because you just realize that I'll focus a little bit more the next day. I had to learn how to set boundaries. What I mean by that was I had to learn how to say no. Greg Clark, who's the founder of College Pro, and I were talking about this 3 years ago. He said he thinks true leadership is when the leader says no more often than he says yes. No to opportunities, no to new ventures. Right? There's always things we could be saying yes to, and as entrepreneurs, we're always yes, 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 yes to people, yes to time, yes to meetings. Now I say no all the time. I have clients all the time who will say, well, can we talk on Saturday? No, we can't, actually, because Saturday's my time. Well, what about 7 o'clock at night? I'm sorry, I can't. I have a client who's been begging me for 4 years from Dubai to coach him, but he needs me to work at like 6 o'clock in the morning or after 6 o'clock at night because of the time zones. I just won't do it. I don't care how much money he throws at me. Because at the end of the day, I need to have my life. The respect that you get when you set boundaries is huge. You know when an employee walks into your office and says, hey, do you have 2 minutes? No, I don't actually. I have office hours twice a week, or we have our weekly meeting and you can book me for that. Or what's the problem? Well, it's this. Well, have you thought about it? No. Well, then go away and think about it. Right? And then when they come back, I've thought about it. Good. Well, then do it. Well, you don't know what it is. I don't care. I hired you. You're smart. Do it. Like, is it right? Is it ethical? Does it live by our core values? And are you willing to live by it? Yes, then do it. Don't let them pass it to you. Here's the newest analogy I just came up with the other day around setting boundaries. Have you ever seen the two people juggling, street jugglers, where they're throwing stuff to each other back and forth? Did you ever notice like the juggler doesn't ever seem to have the stuff in his hand for very long at all? Like it's kind of always being, well, imagine if you were like that as the entrepreneur. Imagine if every time something was given to you, you passed it back off. Because your boundary is, I'm not going to do any of this work. I will delegate or outsource or offshore or say no. Imagine if you could become more the lazy entrepreneur instead of doing. But it's your job to set the boundaries. I had to learn about top 5. This is one of the most profound, highly impactful tools. It's in your handouts. It's a system from about 90 years ago. I'm going to read you the story of top 5. It was a guy named Charles Schwab. Charles Schwab was meeting with a guy like me, Ivy Lee. Ivy Lee was a management consultant. And Lee said, with our services, you'll know how to manage better. The indignant Schwab said, I'm not managing as well now as I know how. What we need around here is not more knowing. We need more doing. We don't need knowledge. We need action. If you can give us something to pep us up to do the things we already know we ought to do, I'll gladly listen to you and I'll pay you anything you ask. Fine, said Lee. I'll give you something in 20 minutes that'll step up your action and doing by at least 50%. Okay, said Schwab. I've just about that much time before I have to catch a train. What's your idea? Lee pulled a blank 3-inch by 5-inch note sheet out of his pocket. I use Post-it notes. He said, take 5 minutes and write on this piece of paper the 5 most important tasks you have to do tomorrow. It took about 3 minutes. Now, said Lee, number them in the order of importance. A few more minutes pass. Now, said Lee, put the sheet in your pocket and first thing tomorrow morning, look at item 1 and start working at it. Pull out the sheet out of your pocket every 15 minutes and keep working on item 1 until it's done and then start working on item 2. I take the Post-it note and put it on the side of my laptop, top 5, and it nags the shit out of me all day long. Every time I look at email, this Post-it note is staring at me, telling me to go back and focus on the highly impactful thing. Do this until quitting time, and don't be concerned if you only finish 2 or 3 things. Even if you only finish 1 item, you'll be working on the important ones. The others can wait. If you don't finish this all with this one method, you won't do it with any other method either. And without some system, you'd probably not even decide what the most important tasks are. He went on to say, spend the last 5 minutes of every day making out a must-do list for your next day's tasks. After you've convinced yourself of the worth of the system, have your people try it out. Try it out as long as you wish, and then send me a check for what you think it's worth. By the way, when you try this, if it works for your company, I'd like you to send me a check for what you think it's worth. I've actually had 2 checks sent to me now. But keep in mind what it was worth 90 years ago, just so. The whole interview 90 years ago lasted 25 minutes, and in 2 weeks, Schwab sent Lee a check for $25,000. Keep this in mind. It was $1,000 a minute 90 years ago. He added a note saying the lesson was the most profitable that he'd ever learned. In 5 years, it turned the unknown Bethlehem Steel into the biggest independent steel producer in the world and made Schwab a $100 million fortune and the best-known steel man alive at the time. Mary Kay from Mary Kay Cosmetics credits this system of top 5 that she read about in Napoleon Hill's book. It was originally called top 6 because everything was a dozen or a half dozen. And Think and Grow Rich is where I first read about this. Barack Obama, as much as I hate him, used this top 5 system with all of his people in his first election campaign. This is a basic tool. It's not about having complicated tools that some MBA figures out with pivot tables. Just a simple Post-it note on the side of your and every one of your employees' computers every day, and you'll start getting more shit done with less people faster. I learned about something called the 80% rule. Not the Pareto principle, a different 80% rule that Dan Sullivan in Strategic Coach taught me in my 2nd year. Here's what it talks about. It talks about the fact that for most of us, an 80% result is good enough. Hell, if I could get an 80% in anything in university, I was thrilled. My mantra was 5-0 and go. Right? But 80% was good. A brochure that is 80% perfect, or a marketing letter that's 80% perfect. For most people, that's good enough. Well, here's how the system of 80% works. For us, as the entrepreneur, or for any of our people, it's about taking the project and getting it 80% done as fast as possible and then handing it to an expert to take what's the opportunity is and let them improve that 20% opportunity. So your job is to take what could be 100% perfect and just quickly get that done. So let's say I was going to do a direct mail or an email to all of my clients. It takes me like a minute to crank something out. It's 80% good. I mean, it's not spelled perfectly. There's no proper grammar. But for most people, they don't really read what's in an email anyway. So it's pretty darn good. Now, to perfect it, it might take me days to get this part perfect. But if I hand it to a copywriter, like my wife, who worked on George Bush's PR campaign, worked inside the White House in PR, she can take my rough draft and make it pop off the page in 15 minutes. I'll be like, holy shit, this is unbelievable. Because she takes that 20% and improves it really quickly so that now it's 96% perfect, yielding about a 4% opportunity to improve. But it got done very, very quickly. It's about momentum, creating momentum. If you're really obsessing, like you're in the flying planes or brain surgery or anything that stuff needs to be maybe more than 96% perfect, hand it to the next expert. They can take that and get it to 3.2% perfect. You're now at 99.2 in 3 passes. Six Sigma is 6 passes at 99.99994, so you're 6 degrees of deviation. That's all this is quickly passing it to the next expert to get it tweaked. But the reality is for most of us and for most of our things, we only need 1 or 2 passes. It's not about us having it perfect. It's about getting other people to work in their area of unique ability. Jim Collins, in his book Good to Great, talked about having a stop doing list. See, here's what drives me crazy about all of us as entrepreneurs reading all these business books is we read them, but then we don't do what we're told. So why did you spend your time reading it in the first place for? Stop doing list is really powerful. Make a list of all the things that are on your plate right now that you just should stop doing. And then stop them. Last time I checked, we own the company. Right? We actually don't have to do anything that's on our plate right now because we're the CEO. We get to delegate or stop everything we want to. It's our business. We get to jig the rules of our own game. I learned that outsourcing was really powerful. And I learned that outsourcing didn't have to mean offshore. If you're against offshoring offshore, all these sites like Elance and Guru and Hire My Mom and Odesk and Mechanical Turk, all these things show you the countries or places where people live. Hire My Mom has all these women who are former high-powered execs or engineers living at home where their kids are in school and they want to work the mommy shift from 9:30 till 2:30. You can have a former VP of engineering from Cisco who was making $400 grand a year, and they'll do work for you for $50 an hour. I have a writer in Boston who does work for me at $8 an hour, and she used to make 80 grand a year. She's just happy to be working from home. Look at outsourcing and offshoring and getting other people to do your work. I learned that deadlines don't work. I can't stand it when someone tells me they'll get something done by Friday. What that means is they haven't thought about the project at all. They haven't thought about all the steps in the project, and they have no idea how many hours or minutes each step is going to take, and they don't know when in their calendar it's all going to get done. So what ends up happening is they end up leaving it to the end and rushing through it and probably missing deadlines. So what I do, if you're going to tell me you're going to do something, is you tell me when in your calendar it's physically going to get done. Not when it's going to be done by, but when the work is going to get done. See, the reality is we don't need a to-do list. We have a perfectly good one. It's called a calendar. Take all of your tasks, put them in your calendar. If you don't have enough time left in your calendar, then outsource and delegate. The reason you don't get all your stuff done is you're not thinking about how long it's taking to do your stuff. Deadlines are bogus. I learned that leadership is really where we had to start focusing as CEOs. I learned that God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth, and we need to use them in that ratio. We need to slow down and just listen. Imagine if you went into a meeting with a little Post-it note and just put a little kind of a T-chart up, and every time you asked a question on the left, you put a little tick mark, and every time you spoke on the right, you put a tick mark. Your goal being to ask more questions. I'll give you an example of asking questions. My mentor was a guy who was being groomed as the chief operating officer at Starbucks. Greg and I would do calls every month. We'd have full-day meetings in person every quarter. He was telling me a story one day. He reported to Howard Schultz, and he was talking about in Seattle. Howard called him one day, and he goes, "Greg, why the hell is the letter B on the sign at 50th and Wallingford? And why is the letter B not working?" And Greg's like, "I don't care, Howard. Like, that's not the question you're supposed to be asking." As CEO, and Howard blew up. He's like, "I care, damn it." Greg's like, "You're not hearing me." He goes, "I care too, Howard, but the question that we need to ask is about systems. So the question about the letter B should be, what system do we have in place to ensure that all letters on all signs at all locations are always working?" That's a question I will answer for you. but I'm not going to tell you why the letter B isn't working. See, the questions we need to think about as leaders are systems questions. People don't fail, systems fail, like Michael Gerber said. So think about when you're at your meetings about asking questions about systems. What systems do we have? What process do we have? Right? Not how are we going to handle the customer complaint, but what system do we have to prevent customers complaining in the future? I firmly believe that you don't need a customer service department. The only reason you have a customer service department is because your products or services suck, or they're not delivering up to your promises, or your website isn't clear enough to handle all the FAQs that the customers have. How often do you ever phone Amazon? Right? Perfect your product, perfect your service, and put all of your FAQs up so people can actually handle it for themselves, and you don't need the customer service department. Look for the missing system, not blaming people. I learned to slow down. Wow, we go fast as entrepreneurs. We scare the hell out of people. You know what the biggest problem of this event is? You're all going to go back to your offices Monday and scare the shit out of your teams. Because you're all going to have 8 pages of notes, and you're going to want to start 12 of the great ideas tomorrow. And it only takes 2 minutes to do this, right? Do you ever notice say that? Here, this will just take 2 minutes. And tie it in with IT and marketing as well. Let's integrate it with the website. It'll only take a couple hours. And I got 12 more of those coming. Slow down. Put a system in place so that all of your ideas are trapped, but slow down. I had to learn to think before I speak, which is really hard because I have Tourette's. I'm on that spectrum of thinking out loud, right? Thinking out loud is on the spectrum of Tourette's. So when you just talk, that's actually causing problems. So I have to think. 2 little tricks I learned. Sit on your hands. If you're an expressive dominant, sit on your hands when you're in a meeting. It prevents you somehow from talking. It's really weird. I don't know why, but it does work. And then the other thing I learned is that in a meeting, as the CEO, I give my opinion or my comments last. The first person in the meeting to speak on any question or any opportunity is the newest person, and we go around the table until the most senior person speaks last. Because the reality is, if you speak last, probably someone else is going to do what you thought anyway. But if you speak first, you're never growing your people. Our role as entrepreneurs is to grow people. It's not to actually do the work. Are there markers up here? Is there markers anywhere? Oh, here we go. Thank you. No, I'm OK. Thanks. So I want to show you an example of something. I think for most of us, our org charts are completely upside down. Right? We were all taught in business school how to do an org chart, right? CEO with all of our VPs, right? Traditional org chart bullshit. So here's how the org chart really should be. The CEO supports the VPs, who supports the staff, who support the clients, who all see the same vision, which is your painted picture, and you build your company living within your core values and your core purpose. Our role is to support people and to grow people. Our role is to actually let them and teach them and help them to learn and help them to make decisions. It's not to go faster by giving them the decisions. It's to grow them so they're able to do what we want them to do or what needs to get done to grow towards our vision. I learned not to react, to just slow it down. That if you can do the count to 10 or talk later in the day, you'll probably be able to handle the problem or the situation a little bit better, a little bit calmer, and you'll cause a lot less ripples. Think of yourself as someone who is, every time you say anything or do anything, as someone who's dropping boulders into your company pond. Every time you do something, you're causing ripples. Be really careful with all of your actions and that you're not reacting and causing the ripples that you don't really want to be doing. I had to learn about confrontation. Why was I always so fucking confrontational? Why did everything have to be a fight? Why was I arguing to be right? Why was I arguing? What was it all like? It didn't even make sense at the end of the day. Was it my own insecurities? Was it the fact that I was too stressed or not slowing it down? But I had to learn to release all of that. I had to learn that loose lips sink ships. If you want it to be a secret, don't tell anyone. I have news for you. As strong as EO is, anything you say in forum, even with the cone of silence, at the end of the day, there is a chance it's going to get out. I don't care who you tell. In business, you tell an employee, there is a chance, because the reality is, as people, we struggle with holding all these secrets, and we need to tell someone that we have a confidence with. Like, I know I'm not supposed to tell you, but I need to tell you because I need to tell somebody. Well, now they're trapped with the secret, so they need to tell somebody just to be able to get through it. That's the reality of what happens. I guarantee you, I've lived it so many times. If you need it to be secret, you don't tell anyone. You don't go to someone for confidence. You don't go to you just need to suck this one up and work through some stuff on your own at times. By the way, if you tell the media that something's off the record, it's on the record. They'll just take what you said that's off the record and they'll reword it, and that's different. You never said that. They just interpreted that from the discussion that we were having, which is legal. If you want it off the record, shut up. Don't say anything, because it will get out. I learned to cut deep and cut once. If you know you're firing a few people, take a good hard look around the organization and look for anybody else that you could be firing at the same time and get rid of everyone all at once. It's like a Band-Aid, just rip it off. We had to learn this years ago. We had 900 people. We were a $900 million market cap. We were growing like crazy, publicly traded company in Seattle. And we had to go fire people. We got an email from the CFO, and she said, by 1 o'clock, I need a list of all of your employees in your division, and I need you to rank them from the highest impact to the lowest impact in your division, and then send us that list. Like, okay. List goes back. As soon as the list went back, an auto reply kicked back to us and said, there'll be a letter coming back to the top 30% of the people on your list. They need to follow the instructions on the letter, which is going to tell them to come to the lunchroom tomorrow. We're doing a mass layoff. So we had 150 people out of 900 got fired that day. I had this one girl came up to me and she's like, I want to go to the meeting. Like, why does Jennifer go to? I'm like, shut up. You don't want to go to this meeting. This is the bad meeting. Well, I didn't get a letter. You don't want the letter. She's like, it's not the golden ticket here. The problem was 2 weeks later, we got an email from the CFO that said, please rank your remaining employees in order of impact. And we had to do it again. Now, if we'd fired 300 on that day, it would have been better than doing 150 and having all the people get through it and work through the survivor guilt and then hit them again. We literally destroyed the organization by not cutting all at once. Right? If you're going to fire people, fire everybody. Don't do one this week and one next week and one month later. Rip the Band-Aid off hard. I learned that nice people are almost always nice. When you sit with people in a restaurant, and you watch their interaction with the waiters or waitresses, or you're walking through a hotel and you watch their interaction with staff or with people that are working things like conferences, you can tell who the nice people are because they treat people with respect. They get to know their names. They're just really nice people. I don't do business with people who aren't. Life's too short. You talk about firing your bad employees or getting rid of the cancers in your organization. What about getting rid of the cancers that work for you as well? What about getting rid of your clients that are jerks? What about getting rid of your suppliers that are jerks? What about getting rid of people who are just mean? I was at a dinner one time with a client. We were sitting at a restaurant table, and the waiter walked up to us. He was sitting down like this, and the waiter came up, and he goes, can you just grab us some more wine? Like, he went like this to the waiter. I'm like, really? Clear signal that this is not somebody I should be coaching, right? That's just not within the core values that I can work within. I had another client one time who every single call we did, she'd argue with me. Just argue and debate and argue and debate. I'm like, you know what? We're done. I'm fired. I'm not coaching anymore. She goes, you have to. I hired you. I'm like, I can refuse service. We're done. I'm not coaching you anymore. I have people who hinge on every word. They might not like them and might not do them, but we don't argue about every single point. Work with nice people. Hire nice people. Surround yourself with nice people. And that little simple test of how people treat other people is true. I learned about being curious. Being curious about your employers, your employees, your customers, your suppliers, it's not knowing what their birthday is or what their kids' names are. That's like saying, I'm going to have a coffee shop and play jazz. Really? Like, everyone plays jazz. Like, really being curious means knowing their fears and their insecurities and their passions and their dreams. Right? Like, what are they really nervous about or excited about or into? It's not about who their spouse's name is and sending them a list going, hey, happy birthday. Really? Really, really get to know people. I've noticed this recently at dinners where I'll be out with people, and all of a sudden at the end of the dinner you realize that there's some people there who never asked a single question about a couple people at the table. Never asked anything. They were happy and fun to sit with, but they were all about themselves. They were never getting curious and getting into those discussions. I realized that I wasn't doing it as much as I should be as well. I need to get to know people. I needed to take time to think. You've heard that saying, right? You'll have the best ideas in the shower. Right? Do you know where Google has whiteboards in all of their bathrooms? So that when you're in the bathroom and you're, oh my God, you can write stuff down? Because they got to write down these algorithms, right? Seriously. There's actually water-based markers that you can put in your shower so you can write on the wall of the bathroom if you need to, like just trap something down. But just take time to think. Do you know that Rockefeller, J.D. Rockefeller, used to go for a walk every day? Just a walk. He'd grab one of his employees. He'd be like, hey, Kirk, you want to go for a walk? Kirk would be like, sure, what's up? Nothing, want to go for a walk. The first couple times is a little awkward, right? Like, you hitting on me? No, we're good. But like, you want to go for a walk? Just to slow it down. Brian and I used to go for walks to actually get less manic. If we saw the other person, we had a promise with each other. If we saw the other person getting stressed or manic, we would grab them to just go for a walk around the building. And we'd just go for a walk. I had to learn to accept criticism. See, criticism isn't a negative thing about you. It's an opportunity to grow. Ray Kroc, who started McDonald's or built McDonald's, said, when you're green, you're growing. When you're ripe, you're dead. Criticism is just an opportunity to grow. So look at yourself. What are the top 3 things about you that you should continue doing? What are the top 3 areas to work on? Criticism isn't a bad thing. It's just areas to work on. We all have them. Be okay with those. Hell, we're okay with telling people stuff to work on. Why can't we be? I learned that negative comments destroy the energy. Right? Energy is real. It's to be cultivated. Our role as CEO is to be the chief energizing officer. So when you make negative public comments about anything, it destroys the energy in the group. Public praise, private criticism. I learned that by telling secrets, or hey, can I just bounce an idea off you in confidence? It destroys confidence. So if I just want to bounce an idea with Ben about the team, Ben's now wondering, what am I talking to Keith about? Why isn't he in the meeting? As soon as you take someone into your confidence and tell them a secret or just want to bounce a confidential idea off them, they're now wondering what you're saying about them behind their back and why they're not included. It's the reason why I can't stand private offices. It's the reason why if you insist on having them, you're not allowed to keep your door closed and you're not allowed to have blinds on your windows. Because people are always wondering what's going on behind those blinds or behind the doors. We notice it ourselves. Watch yourself next week, the next time you walk past an office and you're wondering what's going on in there. Your first instinct is it's probably something not good, which means get rid of the private offices, get rid of the blinds, force the doors to get open, and stop telling secrets. I learned that we have to inspect what we expect. What I mean by that is we have to dig in a little bit and look at the actual parts of our business and find out if it's really happening. Brian and I were coming back from a retreat, just the 2 of us off-site for a couple days. We were driving back from West Vancouver into Vancouver, and he goes, what do you think our customer service like? I'm like, I don't know, probably pretty good. And we'd won call center of the year in North America the year before, so I'm probably doing pretty well, right? He goes, let's just call in. We're driving, let's just do a couple ghost calls. So sure, we call on the speakerphone. Like 9 rings later, they pick up. Not real super happy. Brian goes, hey, I want to get a couch hauled away. Oh, okay, it's like 180, 125. Whoa, 125, that's way more than I thought it was going to be. Okay, well, thanks very much for your call. Click. Brian's like, oh shit. Let's try this again. We did 3 ghost calls. All 3 ghost calls were handled poorly, really, really poorly. He goes, let's call WestJet. Called WestJet. Boom, pick up right away. Hi, we're looking at booking a flight from Vancouver to Toronto. Okay, what date? Give me the dates. Oh yeah, and that's going to be like $974. Whoa, that's way more than I thought it was. Well, we have a couple options for you. If you'd like, you could actually route through Calgary and I could save you $120. Or if you're a first-time customer on the internet, if I give you a code, you can save 15% if you book this afternoon. Well, that's interesting. Would you like me to book you through it? I can walk you through that right now on the phone. No, that's okay. Well, why don't I get your phone number and I can call you back in a couple hours after you look at opportunities. Like, holy shit, like this was awesome. So we go back into our call center and we had 4 people who worked in quality assurance. So we decided to inspect what we expected. So we sat down with the people in quality assurance, pulled them together, and we said, so what do you guys listen in on when you're listening on phone calls? Well, there's an 86-point checklist that we review. Okay? And what's on this 86-point checklist for our 3-minute phone call? Well, there's all these things. Okay, good. So we got all these checklists. How many do you do today? Well, they're really thorough and they're really big, so we only have time to do about 10 calls each during a day or 15 calls each, because 86-point checklist, right? You're managing the process. So well, we send them off to the managers of these rows of agents every week. The managers get the reports. Good. Let's go find out what the managers do with the reports. We sit down with all the team managers, 12 of them. So what do you guys do with the reports? Nothing. They're useless. What do you mean they're useless? Well, there's too much data. We don't get enough of them. There's not enough frequency. So there's just not enough there to do with them. So what do? Oh, we just delete. How long have you been deleting them for? Oh, we've never used them. Okay, so there's 4 full-time people making 40 grand a year for $160,000 a year who are working really hard, diligently, to produce something that no one has ever used. Big problem. So Brian and I that day rewrote our entire quality assurance system. Guess what they had to track? 5 things. Did you pick up the phone on time? Did you wow us? Did you handle the objection? Did you ask for the order? And did you hug us at the end of the call? That's it. We didn't care about the other 81 things on the checklist. Now the agents were doing about 70 phone calls a day, and we actually bonused our agents and the managers based on their customer service rating on those indexes. Guess how often they looked at them? As soon as they freaking came in, right? Inspect what you expect, because often you're going to find that people are busy, but they're not necessarily doing the work that you need, or the outputs that they're getting aren't necessarily outputs that you want. I had to learn about how I work. I work from a conscious stream of thought. I work from just thinking out loud, right? Tourette's, on the spectrum of thinking out loud, I think out loud. So if I'm doing speaking events or if I'm talking to my team, I make stuff up as I go. I mean, I don't make it up in the sense that I'm making it up, but I don't have a script for my presentation. I just see a slide, talk about conscious stream of thought, run with it for about 30 seconds, and I use my countdown clock to make sure I'm on track. So I had to teach my team that when I'm thinking out loud, I'm going to change course a few times. I might even contradict myself a couple of times. It's because I'm still thinking through it. At the end, we'll have some resolve and we can ask questions, but just let me go. I did almost all of my meetings with me pacing, me just walking around. You didn't have to sit at a table just because there were chairs there. If you felt more comfortable moving, move. Right? Why would we tell all the kids to sit still in class? They can't. So why are we telling them as adults to sit still? Allow people to just work the way they work and teach people how we all work differently and how to work together. I had to learn to stop doing and start leading. It's that passing stuff off to other people rather than me doing. I learned, about mentoring while I work. I've often heard people say, oh, I don't have time to mentor, I'm too busy. I don't have time to coach my team, I'm too busy. So we hired the former head of finance from Business Objects. Trish came in to work with us as our CFO. We were working through the budgeting process. This is about 4 or 5 months before I left the company. And I go in to have the budget meeting with Trish. And this girl, Eileen, is sitting there. And Trish goes, oh, by the way, this is Eileen. She's just joining our finance team. She's not going to say anything today. She's not going to ask any questions. She's just going to watch us go through our meeting. I'm like, OK, good. Next week, we've got our budgeting meeting. Trish sits down. She goes, oh, by the way, Eileen's going to be here today. She might have a couple questions, but she's just going to sit in and watch and go through stuff. OK, good. Week 3, hi, Eileen's here again. And she's probably going to ask a bunch of the questions. I might not say much, but we're just going to work through the budgeting meeting. OK, good. Week 4, Eileen and I are sitting down. I'm like, where's Trish? She goes, she's not here anymore. What do you mean she's not here anymore? Well, I run budgeting now, so Trish isn't involved. Oh, shit. So Trish trained her to do this process while Trish was doing the process. It didn't take Trish any more time at all. Trish was doing her job. The mentor, or mentee, sorry, was sitting and watching her. If you want to train somebody on sales, have them listen in on every phone call you do that's sales related. You know how we trained our PR people? We hired 6 in-house PR people that had no PR experience, and we phoned journalists all day long. We landed 5,200 stories in the media about our company. Every time we did an interview, our PR agents were listening to us pitch. You don't run a training session for that. That takes time. As you're doing your job, have people mentor by watching you. It's like an apprenticing program. It doesn't take any time. I had to learn that technology should not drive us crazy. The problem for us is that for most of us as entrepreneurs, we don't understand technology. So when the IT guy walks into your company, your office and says, by the way, we need 4 more of these XB72s that integrate with the 42C thing, and they plug in, we're like, okay, what do we need them for? Well, they'll do this and that. Do we really need them? Oh yeah, if we don't have them, this will happen. All right, I guess. And we need 2 of them. All right, well, how much are they? 14 grand. 14 grand? Well, that doesn't include the integration stuff. That'll be another 60. Fuck. So $100,000? All right, do it, because we don't know how to argue with them, right? Good. So then what do? Then as salespeople, what do we do? Or sorry, as CEOs, we walk over to the sales guy. We go, by the way, you guys are cutting. You're not cutting it. You guys aren't working hard enough. You're not handling objections. I need more results out of you in revenue because I got to pay for this IT shit over here. We do that all the time because the reality is we're letting IT wag the dog. So here's what happens. It's your company. You don't have to do what IT wants to do unless it needs to get done. Take back control a little bit. Here's one example of how I saw it happen. An EO member in Vancouver, Steve Jagger, pulled together his IT team one day and said, your goal for 2011, find 12 expenses on our GL, replace them with 12 free software solutions. You're not allowed to build anything. You're not allowed to write any code. You're not allowed to buy anything. Find 12 free solutions to replace 12 expenses. You guys get to pick the expenses. That's your job for the year. They did it. So guess what he did with them for 2012? He said, do it again. They did it again. 24 expenses in the company replaced with 12 free software solutions. Now all of a sudden they weren't spending money. IT was a way to make money. At the end, for 2013, Steve said, for the last 2 years, we've been listening to our customers and we've been listening to operations and we found some things that we need. We'd like you to solve these problems now, which is what IT likes to do, but we'd like you to try to find free solutions or solutions we can buy or plug in. You need to try to take back control. It got so out of hand at 1-800-GOT-JUNK when we had 9 full-time in-house IT people. Our server room had an earthquake-proof, vibration-proof floor with, who's a techie? What's that system that comes in where if there's a fire, it sprays stuff out and you got like 7 seconds to leave the room? No, it's not sprinkler. It's some gas. What is it? Halon. We had this Halon system. You literally had 7 seconds to get out of the room for. We're a flipping junk removal business, for God's sakes. We didn't need any of this. An earthquake-proof, vibration-proof floor with a full redundant server system off in like Texas or something. Jesus, our clients will be okay if we say we can't pick up your shit for tomorrow. No one's going to die here. But we were spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on stuff because IT was saying we needed it. Well, guess what? IT works for us. Try to take back a little bit of control. I had to learn how to leverage things. That everything we did, we tried to leverage in another way. If we got a media article, we gave it to our sales team. If we did something cool with IT, we called the media so they would cover it. If we got good culture, we called the media so they would cover it. If we got good media coverage about our culture, we used that in our hiring process. Everything we did, we tried to do or leverage it in at least one other place in the company. Everything you do, try to leverage it in at least one other place. I had to learn to not micromanage. One of my franchisees called me up one time. He said, Cameron, you major in the minors. He said, you're always finding all the little things we're not doing well. He said, you're right. Like, I'll give you an example. I used to drove people crazy where their email signatures weren't consistent with what we were supposed to be doing across the company. Fix your email signature. Finally, this franchisee said, I want to tell you something. We have 300 franchisees right now, and 250 of them have no marketing plan, no marketing budget, no marketing calendar. Don't worry about the flipping email signature. Why don't you get all 250 of those people to have a marketing plan and a calendar and a budget so they're actually marketing? Then we can get the signature. Don't major in the minors. Look for the big hit opportunities. By the way, in your handouts, there's an order form for DVDs. If you're ordering any of the 4, I'll give you 20% off. And if you're ordering the set of 4, I'll give you 20% off, but I need you to fill out the form and give it to me today. The 4 cover PR, which is how to land free press for your company. 1 is around culture, and it's how to actually turn your company into a magnet for great employees. The 3rd is around growth, called Leadership at 100 miles an hour. It's how to double your company in 3 years or less, double your revenue and profit. And the 4th is around the emotional roller coaster, the highs and lows of CEOs. So it's 20% off if you fill that out and give it to me today. Make decisions and roll them out. Your employees want you to just make a decision and roll them out. They don't even care what the decision is. Leaders lead, followers follow. They actually want to follow you. So just make decisions. Momentum creates momentum. Tell the truth. You really have to tell the truth. I know it's an old analogy, but what if 60 Minutes came and covered what you were saying? Would it be true? Make sure that everything you say, every fact, every data point, every marketing piece can be validated and is true. Not just so the customers don't find out or the media doesn't find out, but your employees know that you're not telling the truth. They know that you're exaggerating. They know that you're using puffery. They know that you're kind of pushing it all out there. And it actually destroys everything else in the company because they know you're not telling the truth. Make sure that you literally 60 minutes proof everything. Raise the bar. Every time you bring a new employee into your company, raise the bar. Raise the average skill set of the group. If you've got 8 people in marketing, when you hire the 9th person, make sure they're better than at least 4. Always raise the talent pool. Cut the happy talk. By happy talk, I mean take a look at your website and your marketing material. Eliminate 30 to 50% of the words or characters on every page of your website and on every piece of marketing. People don't have time to read it all. You never read anything that's on the websites of anybody that you look at, so why would you think your customers are going to? Take every website page, every marketing piece, and cut 30 to 50% of your copy. If you have to give an example somewhere, it means you weren't clear enough with the first point. So make the first point clear and cut the example. But cut the happy talk. I learned that from a book 11 years ago called Don't Make Me Think. And they were actually the ones that worked with Apple and Amazon on content around their websites. I learned that carbon copy and blind carbon copy are terms that obviously come from the days when there were physical memos with sheets in behind them. Blind carbon copy is destroying trust in your company. Here's why. Let's say I send the 2 of you a memo, and I blind carbon copy Julie. Julie's now, oh, I get to see some dirt. But guess what Julie's thinking 5 minutes later? I wonder who he blind carbon copies about the stuff that we talk about. As soon as you start blind carbon copying, everybody's worried that other people are being blind carbon copied now. If you can't put it above line, don't say it. And stop CCing everybody, for God's sakes. It's ridiculous. So here's my rule. If it doesn't say in the first or second sentence, like first or second line, not sentence, what I'm supposed to do, you're allowed to delete it. So it's like, Christy, blah, 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 blah. Craig and marketing, blah, 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 and then the rest happens. Tell me what I'm supposed to do with this email, then I'll do the rest of the stuff. But prevent this ridiculous stream of ping pong that's happening with our email communication. Has anyone here ever seen the movie The Secret or read the book The Secret? So it can be a little bit cheesy, a little bit materialistic, but I think it can actually be one of the most profound impacts on your organization. We showed the movie The Secret to every single employee. We showed it to every franchisee. We showed it to all of our top franchisees twice. We brought John Asheroff and John DeMartini into our office to actually talk to our employees. We studied work on quantum physics to understand at the molecular level how we are all energy. So the first time I was exposed to this, a guy in my forum group in EO, Spar Street, who actually ended up being roommates with John Asheroff from The Secret about 6 years after that. Spar and I are having breakfast at an EO chapter retreat. We're sitting over breakfast and Spar goes, you know we're all energy. Now Spar was kind of flaky. Okay? Spar is an artist who sells his pieces of art for $35,000 to $50,000 a year to Mel Gibson, the Sultan of Brunei, Richard Branson. They all buy his stuff. But he's a little bit flaky. Okay? He's named after a part of a sailboat, for God's sake. So is his brother, who's Jib. So we're sitting at breakfast, and Spar, who's like this flowing robes, who's the guy, the Canadian author, the book author, like he was on Oprah, like real spiritual? Eckhart Tolle. Spar and I go to this Eckhart Tolle event 15 years ago, 20 years ago, before his first book had come out, and we're sitting there, and like that's the guy Spar is, right? He was following Eckhart Tolle when Eckhart would hand out pamphlets. That's all he had. So Spar is talking about energy. We're energy. At our molecular level, we're energy. And we're all neutrons and protons bouncing around. And I'm like, what are you a flake? Like, we're human. The reality is we are actually, at our molecular level, we are energy. Now, energy vibrates. There's actual, quantum physics is science at the molecular level. Okay? It's not like an airy-fairy thing. It's a science thing that is irrefutable. It's like gravity. Whether you believe it or not, gravity, it works. It's a law of gravity. It's irrefutable. Well, there's laws around energy that are irrefutable. The law around attraction. Do you ever notice that when you go to Starbucks first thing in the morning and you have a barista who's really happy, what does it do to you? It sends you on your happy way. Now, if you have a barista who's grumpy, or you get cut off by somebody, or somebody flips you the bird as you're driving, what does it do? It pisses you off and it changes, it literally restricts and changes your energy. In your company, our role is to inspire with this painted picture idea, to have everyone seeing the same vision of where we're going, to bring more and more people into our company as suppliers and employees and customers and advisors who are vibrating the same way we're vibrating, and to get the cultural cancers out of our organization. That's what this movie's about. Get all of your employees to watch the movie The Secret one day, or even as an EO chapter, watch the movie The Secret, and then spend a couple hours talking about how do we take the laws of quantum physics and apply them to our business, and watch what happens. The shit is magic. I learned about women. Women talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. Now, there's money in this, right? Entrepreneurs have ADD and I don't get upset, and Tourette's, right? So what's the secret here? I read a book called Trends by Tom Peters and Martha Piper. And the book Trends talked about women and the fact they talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. So if women talk a lot, here's a specific example. If you stayed at a great hotel like, the Four Seasons, the Ritz-Carlton, whatever, right? And we have a great experience. As a guy, who do we tell about that amazing experience we had in the hotel?
Nobody.
No one. It's fucking awkward. Really? So like the spa was great, the pillows were awesome, the bed was great, they had all these set. Like, we don't tell anybody. That is just weird. Now, if a woman has a great stay in a hotel, who do they tell? Everyone. When do they stop? Never. Women make buying decisions based on the group and sharing of information. You ever notice that women never stop talking? For guys, it's like, I got to get away. I'm going to go hunt. Right? Women just keep talking. Even our 4 kids, the girls don't shut up. First thing in the morning, I was, fuck, I need a coffee to get away from you guys. You're driving me nuts. Now, so we know they talk. We know they make buying decisions based on talking to each other. Why are we marketing to men? Makes no sense. Spend all of your marketing dollars towards the female buyer. I'll give you an example. In the household, women make 50% of the buying decisions. By the time they hit 50, they're making 85% of the buying decisions in your household, and they're spending his parents' money and her parents' money as well. So they're making 85% of 5/6 of the people's buying decisions are being made by women, and women talk. So here's what you do. Market to them. Tell them what to say. Give them the testimonials. Give them the small, quick speaking points to talk about. Hey, if you love to stay, go on, right? Yelp. Right? Women make like 80% of the Yelp recommendations because that's how they share. So feed it, right? Don't feel bad, like feed it. Do you know that at 1-800-GOT-JUNK, all of our marketing was female-centric, written by female copywriters, tested by female graphic designers? Why did we have the friendly uniform drivers who were like fraternity boys and clean shot? Like the women liked it, right? I'm hiring them again. He's cute. They didn't care. You know what the big thing was? We swept up. We actually said to the women when we were on the job site, by the way, at the end of our job, we'll sweep up after you so it's all kind of clean. And we're glad we're getting rid of your junk so your lazy husband can sit and watch the game. That's what we told them. So guess what they did? You know what? Just call them and they'll get rid of all the shit your husband won't do. And they sweep up afterwards. They're so cute. Feed it. Feed it. Here's the last thing I'm going to give you. It's called rule number 6. So rule number 6 is this. About 30 years ago, Reagan and Gorbachev were having their all-day summit meeting. They're listening to each other on these little headsets. They would hear each other's translation happening. And during the day, somebody would come running in and they'd be all pissed off and grumpy and screaming. And Gorbachev would say, remember rule number 6. And the people would calm right down and smile and they'd walk out of the room. This happened 3 times. Remember rule number 6. The person would calm down and walk out of the room. So at the end of the day, Reagan turned to Gorbachev and he said, I only have one question. Like, we've solved all the world's problems, but what's rule number 6? And Gorbachev started laughing. He said, rule number 6. Rule number 6 is don't take yourself so fucking seriously. And Reagan said, well, what are the first 5 rules? Gorbachev said, there aren't any. I think at the end of the day, that's what we have to remember, is we get to rig the game that we own, and we get to play, and we also get to have fun at it. You're going to ride the roller coaster. You got to choose to put your arms in the air and ride it and have fun, because you're going to ride it. Thanks for having me back to Toronto.